For centuries, the Ottoman Empire functioned as a massive tapestry of multi-ethnic coexistence, with diverse populations living side by side. In the early years of the 1900s, that delicate structure began to tear. To understand how this collapse unfolded on the ground, we must look through the eyes of one of its primary witnesses, Ottoman commander Cemal Pasha. This unraveling took hold well before the First World War. In 1909, the province of Adana erupted into intense street violence, creating a localized war that serves as the blueprint for the catastrophes that followed. The violence was fueled by nationalist committees like the Dashnak and Hunchak. Figures such as Monsignor Musheg began aggressively stockpiling European weapons, openly threatening the local Muslim population and pushing long-standing ethnic friction toward an armed confrontation. This chart shows the severity of the outcome. In Adana, 17,000 Armenians and 1,850 Muslims were killed, proving that the situation had escalated far beyond the government's ability to maintain order. These casualties broke the local bond of trust. The government's inability to stop the carnage in Adana left a vacuum of fear, one that replacement officials and regional commanders would struggle to contain as the empire moved toward total war. By 1914, the Ottoman Empire was fighting for its survival on multiple fronts, struggling to hold its borders against the superior numbers of the Allied powers. Moskov siyasati, Russian political maneuvering, became a literal invasion as Russian forces pushed through the Ottoman border. Their strategy also relied on internal disruption. By arming separatist groups, they forced the Ottoman army to fight on two fronts, the border invasion and an uprising behind their own defensive lines. Facing an external army and an internal insurgency that was actively cutting their supply chains, the military command in Istanbul found themselves in an untenable strategic position. In May 1915, the central government issued a temporary law to solve the problem by force. They ordered the relocation of the entire Armenian population away from the war zones, pushing them toward the deserts of Mesopotamia. In his memoirs, Cemal Pasha notes he was not involved in the original decision-making in Istanbul. However, as the 4th Army commander in Syria, the burden of executing these orders and managing the human cost became his responsibility. The relocation was a macro-level strategic maneuver. It was designed to secure the empire's borders, but it was enacted with a total disregard for the logistical nightmare it would create for the thousands of families forced onto the road. On the ground, the relocation convoys were immediate humanitarian disasters. Families on the move faced starvation, outbreaks of disease, and frequent attacks by bandits, who took advantage of the lack of security. The geography itself was a death sentence. The routes led through vast, arid landscapes where water and shelter were almost non-existent, leaving the refugees exposed to extreme desert conditions for weeks on end. Civilian administrators failed to provide even basic logistics. Without food reserves or medical oversight, the convoys were essentially abandoned to the elements by the very government that had ordered their movement. The strategy devised in Istanbul had created a catastrophe that now sat directly in the lap of regional commanders like Cemal Pasha. Recognizing the scale of the crisis, Cemal Pasha used his authority as 4th Army commander to bypass standard protocols and intervene in the relocation process. To prevent mass starvation, Cemal Pasha diverted military grain supplies, redirecting them into civilian refugee camps. He also successfully petitioned Istanbul to redirect 150,000 refugees toward the more hospitable regions of Syria and Beirut, saving them from the harsher environment of Mesopotamia. In Lebanon, he established specific humanitarian sites, including the Ayan Torah orphanage. By diverting military funds, he provided a safe environment, food, and medical care for 1,000 Armenian children who lost their parents on the march. Cemal Pasha's interventions show that even within a collapsing system, local authority could pivot. While Istanbul dictated the macro-level movement, it was the commander's redirecting of military resources that ultimately determined who survived the march.